Well, I'd really like to thank Andrea for joining me in this. It's relatively rare I get him into trouble, but I've been trying to run this workshop or this presentation on and off at FOSS4G events because there's so many ways people use GeoServer that are inspiring. So this talk is GeoServer used in fun and interesting ways. It could have also been like louder, dun 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 dun. Okay. This talk is GeoServer used in fun and interesting ways. I could have also been like use cases with GeoServer or scary things Andrea does when you're not looking. So this is brought to you by myself, Jody. I'd like to thank my employer, GeoCat, for the opportunity to speak with you today. And
by Andrea, working for GeoSolutions, and I want to thank my company as well. GeoServer at a glance, well, geospatial web server providing a lot of protocol and data attachments, and a bit of them are core, a bit of them are extension and community modules, and yeah, we are going to see how we used all of this in practice in this presentation.
And this is usually what you see at a FOSS4G event. Here's what GeoServer does out of the box. This talk is about what GeoServer does when you add to the box. So, you know, it's GPL license, established project, etc. But before we start, this talk is to provide confidence that if you've got a difficult problem, GeoServer is up to the task. It's here to inspire you with examples of what's possible. And we're here to like illustrate flexibility. If you've got an interesting system, I don't know, maybe your GeoServer is running around on a boat and doesn't see the internet often, chances are someone's done that already. So GeoServer can take on very challenging situations, but honestly, most situations aren't so challenging. So please be amazed at the examples in this talk and not terrified, okay? Because like there's terrifying things here, and I don't want you to be scared that you've got to, you know, I don't know, run around in the North Atlantic or have a 60 GeoServer cluster or something like that. So these are examples of different people who have succeeded with GeoServer in strange and bizarre ways.
Okay, Code D is a Copernicus data and exploitation platform that you can find online. It provides near real-time ingestion of the various Sentinel satellite data. It's based on a GeoServer cluster, and it uses the OpenSearch for your extension for searching. Nowadays, actually, it's running also Stack in parallel, so you got the two search engines. They provide, well, the same catalog in two different protocols. And you got a lot of usage of the WMS service with time dimension, WCS, plus direct download of the data. DLR, German Space Agency, is using a lot of this as well to publish, again, satellite imagery, again, Stack and whatnot, using a GeoServer cluster. They are users of the GMS clustering plugin, for example. Talking about scary things, and and yeah, they serve a ton of data with GeoServer. EUMETSAT is yet another use case of taking satellite data and putting it on the web using EUMETView. In this case, we have both satellite data and some amount of vector data like the ASCAT wind dataset. And again, near real-time ingestion with a GeoServer cluster with time dimension, with ability to travel through time with a time scroller, and prepare animations and so on. It's pretty interesting. This is a more down-to-the-ground use case, Regione Liguria GeoPortal, so a geoportal from a region in Italy, but still, it throughputs at more than 600 requests per second, provides the run-of-the-mill protocols that you are used to expect, and provides more than 1,000 layers to cover all the basic needs of public administration in Italy. BEV, the Austrian Ministry and Address Register, has again a significant cluster with more than 10 terabyte of aerial data covering the entire country, updated. Well, they updated the entire country once every 3 years, so they do yearly flights. And again, run-of-the-mill services with Inspire compliance in this case, and a lot of traffic. Maritime control and security, this is a veritable monster. I gave a dedicated talk about this use case. 500,000 ships, billions and billions of positions, high rate of ingestion of all the ships moving around, and historical analysis as well as real-time display.
So Andrea just talked a lot, and he's been doing that all day, so I'm going to take the microphone away from him. But the common thread of all of these examples you've just seen is just how big and scary problems GeoServer can handle. So I just want you to be confident that this technology can grow to meet your needs. An interesting project by our friends at Camp to Camp, and Gabriel, I don't know if he's here somewhere, there he is a really neat project where they've taken the components of GeoServer and they've factored it out into a microservice kind of cloud-first environment, so using technologies like Spring Boot and so on. And I think for this example, the initial customer replaced a 60-node GeoServer cluster with a single Cloud Native GeoServer setup. So it's neat to see the components of GeoServer remixed for other environments, and I wish Camp to Camp well. Look forward to working with them. Another kind of close to home example is a fellow OSGeo project, GeoNode. So GeoNode contains GeoServer as one of the components as part of their stack. And yeah, just a very long-standing, successful integration story. We don't hear too much from them. They must be happy.
Well, the thing is that they normally talk to me directly and complain to me in person.
So that makes me happy. Another thing that makes me happy is my employer, GeoCat. So we have a professional distribution of GeoServer called Creatively GeoServer Enterprise. So this offers like a long-term support distribution for customers that are startled at the idea that they might have to update every 6 months or every year. And we do fun things like, give them a custom theme for GeoServer so it looks a little bit more sexy. And yeah, we enjoy that. And then we also have it's GeoCat, so it's a spatial data infrastructure. It's a SaaS offering, so for people that don't really want to run their own infrastructure, we set up an environment with GeoServer and GeoNetwork, and yeah, they can just talk to us and get going. So what I'm trying to showcase in this section is GeoServer being used as a component in other open source projects and then also in commercial ventures as well. So a project, another OSGeo project here is GeOrchestra that uses GeoServer somewhere in the mix. Do we have anyone from GeOrchestra here? No, okay. Moving a little bit lower level, the next section is talking about GeoServer integrations in a little bit more interesting environments. So Ian, who will wave from the crowd, had a very creative challenge where he was working with a web map service that, let me say, wasn't quite as capable as GeoServer. And so he stuck GeoServer in front of it to handle difficult concepts like reprojection and caching, and then used cascaded the requests back to the original web map server. So it's a nice way to take, if you've got an established project, that server that you can't change, you can stick GeoServer in front to teach it new tricks. And I ran into a similar situation where it was like some crazy business intelligent environment that wanted to generate styles on the fly and get dynamic visualizations out of a business intelligence system. But the idea here is you can use GeoServer to integrate with other web services for fun and profit. Very basic integrations are possible, like just not quite out of the box. It's a community module. There's something called KeyCloak, and you can authenticate with KeyCloak in order to integrate GeoServer with things like ADFS and other security systems. So GeoServer, with a little bit of integration, can work with the security setup in your organization. Custom integrations, this is where it gets a little bit more fun again.
Right. This is where we go from what's in the box to what's outside of the box. Like GeoServer is extensible in a variety of ways. We do it all the time to cater for specific needs of the customer. GeoServer is chock full, of extension points. Sorry. So authorization and authentication is one that you can build with your own integration, and we do custom authorization subsystem based on the requirements of the specific customer all the time. Next. Custom mosaic plugin that we did for Digital Globe years ago. They already had a catalog of all the images that they wanted. They didn't want to replicate it into an image mosaic index. We switched in a plugin for the image mosaic to replace the normal JDBC catalog with one that would talk to their services. Yeah, and this is also what we ended up doing 12 or 13 years ago. This was an 80 nodes cluster serving 5 petabytes of raster imagery. And again, the traffic was so high that we had to go microservice because each service has its own dynamic memory usage preference for high CPU versus low CPU, high memory versus low memory. So we split GeoServer into microservices. They were still WAR files, but each one was providing one service, and then deployed it on the machine type that was most suitable for the service and scaled them independently. Large data integration is what we have in the Maritime Security Agency, with GeoServer pulling from a Databricks cluster in Azure, which contains 150 billion points, which are the location of ships over 7 years. And then we have on the fly Apache Spark that's reconnecting these points into tracks and eventually caching them into PostGIS for GeoServer to display quickly. Because, well, pulling data from Databricks is fast, but not as fast as needed for WMS usage. Cloud integrations.
So there are other groups around there. I think this was done by CCRI. So it's a project GeoMesa, which offers kind of a ready-to-use system that is backed by Apache Spark and Hadoop and can do all the automatic scaling and so on. And they had lots of fun using GeoServer and a web processing service to visualize, similar amounts of data volumes. And this one was interesting that it was written in Scala, and the project has gone off over to the Apache Foundation. And we still hear from them on occasion. Near as I can tell, they're happy. Interestingly, the next project, GeoWave, is almost exactly the same setup, only this time it's written in Java, but it's still one of these Apache Spark Hadoop cluster parties. Yeah. There is also just the option of using the cloud storage integration option. So there's a component in GeoServer called GeoWebCache, and so the tile sets can actually be stored off on relatively cheap long-term storage in S3, Google, Azure Storage, etc. And did you want to talk about the COG aspect?
First of all, I would like to point out that these things that we call blob stores are an interface that we can implement in a variety of ways. And while it's not on this slide, someone contributed a Swift blob store for the Swift cloud system. We never heard of it. We don't know who's using it, but it's there. So it's one example of one cloud integration that somebody contributed through the extension points. Do we have right, COG? Well, COG is a way to store GeoTIFFs on blob stores in a way that it can be efficiently read, and GeoServer supports reading from COGs stored in S3, Google Storage, Azure Storage, and we keep on developing new integrations because each blob store system has its own little library to integrate with.
Sorry, that slide was a bit confusing because we had the blob storage used both for storing the tiles that are generated, but also for storing the raw data that GeoServer can use for visualization. So we'll figure out that slide later. So the long story short is the vanilla GeoServer that you've been hearing about all week is really just the start of a journey. And you can write your own story, and we're very interested to hear where you're going. So what is your story? Rather than taking questions, tell us what you're up to. Thank you.
But we are also taking questions.
Oh, you're taking questions. I'm here to listen.